very excited to be talking to you about ABM success. In particular, as we look forward to 2019, many of my clients are coming off of experiments and are looking to roll out ABM programs in more holistic ways. So the timing is perfect as we look forward to next year and what we want to do. We have a lot to cover in our conversation today, and we're going to try and cover as much of this as possible. And of course, I can't wait to get your questions and comments at the end. We're going to talk a little bit about how I define account-based marketing to make sure we all have a shared context. We're going to talk about if ABM is right for your business, because it's not right for all businesses. And of course, if you decide that ABM is a good fit, what are the steps you need to take to make a high impact in your organization? The first thing I want to do is make sure that we have a shared understanding of account-based marketing. Account-based marketing is the discipline of directing our outbound marketing programs to a dedicated set of targeted accounts. We have to flip our orientation so we're not focused solely on individuals within companies, but also looking holistically at what is happening in those accounts. Now, this sounds rather straightforward, but it's easy to get tripped up. I was talking with a friend of mine a few months ago, and she had missed an opportunity to do an account-based marketing program, that their efforts were failing and everyone was complaining it wasn't working. And I was really surprised because given the nature of her business, account-based marketing should have been a slam dunk for them. So I asked some questions. I said, well, what were your account-based marketing programs? And she told me how they took a piece of content that they'd been syndicating in other places and they directed it towards a targeted set of accounts. Okay, that sounds like an interesting thing. So I asked her what accounts. And she told me that they went after Fortune 2000 accounts because they served businesses that were broad. All right. I asked if they personalized that content in any way, and she said no. I asked how they followed up on the people who had downloaded that content, and she said they followed up in the same way they always had, and they had a calling team follow up on that person. If that person wasn't, put them in a nurturing pool. So when you took a step back, they hadn't actually done account-based marketing. What they had done was a traditional technique forwarded to a set of targeted accounts. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but the problem is they hadn't been selective enough about the accounts they were going after, they hadn't been thoughtful about how to personalize that content, and they hadn't changed how they engaged with contacts at the accounts they were targeting. So work together today, going to talk about the changes that we need to do in order to make that shift. Now, making that shift is actually hard work. So I want to make sure that it's the correct thing to do for your business. And there are 5 questions that we need to ask ourselves to make that determination. The first question we have to ask is, do buyers purchase my product or service by committee? Are there multiple people who are involved in the evaluation, selection, and approval of a specific purchase of our product or service? If the answer is no, then account-based marketing probably isn't necessary because you have only an individual person that you're targeting. But for many of us who sell complex products or services to other businesses or organizations, there are many people who are involved, and account-based marketing could be a good fit. We also want to understand if the problem we solve is specific to an individual, or is it something that can easily be articulated as a benefit to the company that we're serving? And this is really important. If something we sell is to a business, but it's more of an impulse sell or something that affects just a single function, it's not as likely that account-based marketing is going to drive success for us. But if what we do can be articulated as an organizational benefit, then we start to see the value of marketing and selling and directing our messaging to the account as a whole. Can we describe our value proposition to not just the people who use our product and service, but the people who might be willing to purchase it, fund it, evaluate it, sign off on it, prioritize our product or service over the other things they may be thinking about? If we can't have clear value propositions to all those different roles, then we might not yet be ready for account-based marketing. Does our buying process take weeks or months? This is really important because if our buying processes are very, very short, then a full account-based marketing program is probably more than you need to invest in. And of course, the final question, and one that trips up a lot of organization, is our organization ready to change how we measure marketing and hold marketing accountable? And we'll talk a little bit about what that change is. So after all of that, if you've decided that you meet all or most of that criteria and account-based marketing is right for you, then we have to look at what are the things we need to do in our marketing programs and in our strategy to make sure that it's successful. And I like to break these down into 5 elements: setting goals, choosing accounts, auditing data, defining triggers, and I'll explain what I mean when we get to that section, and of course, aligning content, not just to individual contacts, but also to the company as a whole. The very first thing we need to think about is how we measure the success of our marketing campaigns. Traditionally, marketing is measured by leads, but in an account-based model, we actually have to turn this completely upside down, because in an account-based model, marketing is doing programs, sales is doing outreach. We're building relationships across multiple people within an organization and benefiting from referrals and introductions within that framework. So the way we measure leads is really misleading, because at the end of the day, if we're doing account-based marketing correctly, we have the people we want to focus on in our database. It doesn't matter where we first initiated them. This notion of giving credit to sales or marketing is misplaced. Instead, we have to measure things that are going to have an impact on the organization that we're trying to target overall. What you see on the screen here is a sample dashboard. These are the kinds of things that marketing should be held accountable for in an account-based model. So certainly we have financial metrics. We want to understand how much business we're driving with our programs, because account-based marketing isn't just about finding an opportunity. It's also about accelerating that opportunity to close. So whether marketing generated the initial contact or not, we still want to develop marketing strategies and programs and content that are going to help move them through that buying process. We, of course, want to look at how much pipeline we're creating. And one of the things that's really important in an account-based marketing model is to track our win rate and opportunities. If we're doing account-based marketing correctly, we should see a lift and an improvement in our ability to win deals because we're building deeper, more robust relationships. We want to track things around advocacy, referrals, and case studies. And of course, references are really important to us as a business. We want to look at account coverage. It's not enough to say we have leads in our database. We want to understand, do we have contacts in our database that are across the entire buying committee and influence committee? And more importantly, not only in their database, but are they actually engaging with us over a given period of time? You'll see here this dashboard is sort of a quarterly view, but you should be looking at this much more regularly than that. The last thing that we want to make sure that we measure, and this is something most marketing teams don't look at in a traditional model, but is really important in an account-based model, is how long it's taking our buyers to move from one stage of the buying process to another. And this is typically measured in days. Not only is marketing engaging the folks that we want to participate in the buying process, but are we helping move them along with our sales peers? The next thing we have to do is choose accounts. And this is where a lot of account-based marketing programs die before they ever get started. Because what we do is we go out to the sales team and we say, well, what accounts do you want us to target? And while the sales team should actively participate in the selection of accounts, and they have insights that we will find very valuable, salespeople don't have all the data they need to make informed decisions. We as marketers have to lead that process and then get their feedback. And there are 3 things we need to take into account when we develop those lists of targeted accounts. First of all, is there a firmographic fit? Is this a company that our product or service can serve? Typically, this is things like geography or industry or size company. Many of the profile criteria that we often think about when we're doing marketing. But an account-based model has to go beyond that. We also have to think about things like propensity to purchase. How likely is this account to purchase from us now or within a short period of time? And here we take into account things like how fast are they growing? What other products or services do they have in place already? Those are the kinds of things we need to understand. This is often called intent data. Are they signaling us to tell us that they're an active purchase process or not? How are they doing financially? The third bucket that we take into account is our engagement history with them. How much affinity do they have with our brand today? Do they know who we are? Have they engaged with us before? Now, let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that the only accounts that we want to work at in an account-based model are those who already know who we are and are in an active purchase process. But we want to focus our efforts on those organizations that are most likely to drive business for us. So those are things we have to take into account as we look at prioritization. This isn't just a wish list of people we hope to have business with. One of the ways we do this is by being very data-driven. We want to look at all the data that's at our disposal today, in our systems, even in our billing systems, things that the sales representatives understand, usability studies we might have had about our product or service, information that might be sitting in our support repositories, customer satisfaction surveys, market research. All of those things are going to come into account. But all of those things are only reflective of the interaction that we've had directly with that potential company or buyers. We also want to add a layer onto that, which is third-party data sources that let us understand and find signals that might be happening outside of our own website, outside of our own conversations, our own emails, etc. So we might turn to intent data providers. We might look at data aggregation companies. And we might look at things like news feeds. Now, some of this is manual, hard work, and it's tedious. But I promise, if we take the time to do this correctly, your account-based marketing programs are going to have a lot more success, and your sales teams are going to be directed in ways that are far more strategic to the business. With all of that work done, you're probably going to have a large list of accounts that you can potentially serve. And you want to think about ways of tiering those accounts so that you can provide specific levels of focus. So your tier 1 accounts, these are the ones who are most likely to purchase from you in the shortest period of time. You're going to want to give very individual attention. And I'm not just talking about role-specific attention here. I'm talking about account-specific content where we actually move on activities based on everything we know about them. And we'll talk in the next phase when we talk about triggers about some examples of what that might be. This is a very small number of accounts per sales rep because it's very human intensive. We take all the general work that marketing does, and sales helps us personalize that to the people and accounts we're serving. We have a slightly larger list of tier 2 accounts where we're doing one to few role-based specific communications, but not specific to the account. And then we have tier 3s, which are people we believe will be a good fit. Tier 3 folks are typically folks that maybe perhaps, for example, they've just renewed a contract with a competitor. They meet your firmographic profile, they've had some engagement with you, but they're not going to buy your product or service for a year or 2 years based on an existing contract. You still want to nurture that relationship because ultimately you think they're a good fit, and they could be a feeder for tier 1 and tier 2 accounts. So as you sell things, as you lose opportunities, as you learn more about accounts that may turn out not to be a good fit, you have this feeder pool that you can continue to engage and accelerate. Now, we want to audit our data. And one of the things that's really important about us auditing the data is to be honest with ourselves about the information we have about all the people on the buying committee. So you're going to see here a very simple example where we've looked at 2 accounts and key roles, in this case 3 roles, the owner and the president, the CFO, and a controller. And we want to understand, do we have their physical mailing address? Because direct mail is a really valuable technique and tool for us, particularly as we go out to that tier 1, level 1 accounts. Do we have their phone number, their email? Do we know their social profiles? And the red and green signal here, green means yes we do, red means no we don't. So we can clearly see where we're missing information. One of the things that you don't see building on the screen right now is sort of also a summary of these target accounts. What percent of all the people in our universe do we have with each of these factors? And by measuring these things on an individual account basis, as well as in an aggregate fashion, we can understand where to invest our time and our resources on data collection. Many of us have inside sales teams, and those inside sales teams are often about lead follow-up and meeting acquisition. They will continue to do that, but they're also about data collection and account mapping. They're going to help us turn these areas of red into green. Now, I also want to talk about defining triggers, because in an account-based marketing model, our traditional lead scoring, where we look at the accumulation of activity, how much time someone has spent with us or how many minutes they've spent with us as a way to signal that it's ready for the next action, can actually be misleading for us. We want to look more specifically at specific triggers, things that we know should create an action either for marketing or for sales. And I'm just giving you some examples here. I know this is a little bit difficult to read, but for example, if we see 3 people at an account who have downloaded a specific piece of content in the last 30 days, that spike in activity might tell us something. Maybe we want to set a follow-up task for a salesperson to reach out and find out what's happening there. In other cases, we may want to act on sales. So sales may add a new contact that's an important part of the buying committee into the database. Maybe you want to trigger a communication to them to promote assets that we think might be interesting to them. In other cases, we may have an individual person who is registered for an event like this, a web seminar, or an in-person event of some kind. Maybe we want to look at all the other people in our database who are also at their same company and send them a personalized invitation to the same event, where we not only invite them to the event, but we reference the person has been registered. So we say, hey, we thought that you might want to join your colleague, Emily, at this session, and here's information to join her. So when we talk about one-to-one communications, we talk about our inside sales and BDRs or SDR teams, whatever you call them, personalizing content, those are the kinds of things we're talking about. Now, we also have to look at aggregate about some of the big things that we can do that help progress people through opportunity development. And I like to break these down into 2 things, initiators and engagers. So initiators are the set of activities that happen right before someone moves to another stage of the sales or buying process. And we can look back in our history to try and find the things that happened right before those cases happened. Those are our initiators. What we want to do is we want to do the same exercise. We look back 2, 3, 4 sales cycle, as much data as you can get your hands on. And we look at the things that engage multiple people in the buying committee. Those are the things that have broad engagement. So you want to build some of our triggers on common sense, some of the examples I was giving for you. And you also want to look at our data to find things that initiate next stage behavior and that engage multiple people. Once we understand that, we also, of course, need to align our content. This is the final stage of this process. We want to make sure that we understand what are the questions that specific people and specific roles have in the buying process, depending on where they are, and how can our content answer those questions. And this is basic good content marketing and good content hygiene. The difference is in the account-based marketing model, we not only need to develop the content, we need to try and find ways to put the account-specific context into that content. So it takes some extra effort to take a white paper and personalize it for a specific account, or to take a white paper and personalize it for a specific role. Often that's just changing the subject line, affecting the imagery, using different examples. But the effort to do that, especially for your level 1 or tier 1 accounts, is critically valuable in producing high impact programs. Now, I know I just went through all of those 5 steps very quickly, and this is not a quick process. Account-based marketing is a strategy, and it takes a lot of planning and a lot of effort. But that effort is very worthwhile if you answered positively the questions we went over at the beginning of our discussion. You have a more efficient collaboration with sales. Account-based marketing has been proven to increase deal size, and we also have a better return on the programs that we're doing. I'm really looking forward to getting your questions and comments, and also want to let you know that there's a lot of information on marketingadvisorynetwork.com/resources about account-based marketing that you can access for free and without registration. In particular, I want to call attention to something called the Account Campaign Brief, which is a really easy way for you to get on the same page with your sales team around specific accounts. So with that, I'm going to get quiet for a minute, and I welcome your comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Samantha. That was wonderful. I've opened up chat, folks, so if you'd like to submit any questions, you can chat them there, or type in your phone number or name, and I can unmute you if you'd rather do it by phone. We've got a couple minutes to ask Samantha some questions. While we're waiting, Samantha, I thought, one of the things I think that can be really challenging about ABM is not just the content, but specifically really thinking about that messaging, right? What's that unique kind of messaging that you have to develop when you're targeting an entire account instead of just, individuals? Could you talk a little bit about how one might kind of, identify that type of messaging, or even start that process of thinking through it?
Absolutely. It's really critical that our messaging be fine-tuned. So we as a business always want to have some level of consistent messaging that no matter who we're selling to or who we're talking to, we look consistent and compliant with our brand, and we have an overarching message. But very quickly in an account-based model, we need to go beyond that, and we need to find ways to make sure that that message resonates with the specific people that we're looking at. So once we have that core messaging framework, we need to put it in the context of the business that we're talking to. So we need to make sure that we arm and train our sales team to understand how to personalize those communications. So I'll give you a simple example. If we say that efficiency of closing the quarter from an accounting standpoint is our primary value proposition, the salesperson is now able to go with the information they learned about a level 1 account and say, hey, John at ABC Company, I understand that it currently takes you 5 days to close the quarter. Our customers on average do that in 2 days. The only way for us to personalize that message and to know that it takes them 5 days and we can do it in 2 is to know something about that account. And so that's the level of contextualizing our messaging and position I'm talking about. And again, it takes a lot of work, but when we do that, we can help create a sense of resonance, and people start to say, oh, that applies to me. And they can start to see how your solution can affect them in a positive way.
Wonderful. That's very, very helpful. Great example. We've got a question here from Tanya. In most organizations, the sales enablement organization tends to be leading these types of activities. What advice or how would you guide marketing professionals to work with sales enablement to make these things happen, to do these kinds of campaigns?
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. I'm actually not seeing sales enablement lead these kinds of things in most organizations. What I do see sales enablement taking a very active part in is a piece of the ABM strategy, which is to help the team understand how to sell in the context of a complex buying process, and to set up trainings and to provide infrastructure and some help the team understand how to use tools. Marketers are really responsible to help drive the accounts that we're targeting and to help drive the content that those sales enablement resources are able to leverage in their efforts. So of course it's a joint effort. Of course you want to engage them. They'll also be engaged with sales operations folks and sales managers, but we should not as marketers sit back. We really have to take a very, very active role. And the most effective way to make sure that happens is to make sure that you're measuring the right things. So instead of just measuring leads that go through, make sure your marketing team is accountable for the broader picture so that you really truly can be working in collaboration with the entire organization.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time, folks. Samantha, thank you so much for everything that you shared today. This has really been fabulous. We've been recording this, so we'll make it available offline for everyone as well. I'd just like to say thank you again on behalf of Crawford Group. Want to make sure you all are connecting with us on social. Visit the website. And have a great day, everyone.